You are being controlled right now, and you don't even realize it. Not through force, not through threats, not through anything you could point to and name, through your own availability, through your own predictability, through the terrifying ease with which other people can reach into you and pull out exactly the reaction they were counting on. What if I told you that the most powerful move you will ever make in your life is not something you do, but something you stop doing? Have you ever noticed certain people who seem to possess an almost otherworldly command over every space they occupy, without raising their voice, without pleading with anyone, without needing to prove a single thing? They don't chase, they don't perform, they don't explain themselves. They simply pull back, and suddenly the entire atmosphere shifts. The energy of the room transforms without a single word being exchanged. People begin to wonder what they're thinking. People start reaching out. People feel their absence as something that unsettles something deep inside them, something they can't quite name but cannot ignore. Now imagine that person is you. Imagine you stop automatically reacting to everything unfolding around you. That instead of firing off an impulsive response, you choose a profound stillness. That instead of flaring up in the moment, you quietly take one step back and let the silence speak first. What do you think would happen? This is where everything is buried. This is the exact location of the secret. The moment you stop being emotionally, physically, and psychologically available at all hours, the world around you enters a quiet crisis. Not because you matter less, because until that moment, the people in your life had grown deeply accustomed to steering you through your own reactions, your impulses, and your absolute predictability. The day you choose to withdraw, the entire game collapses. People who believed they understood you completely suddenly discover, in one jarring flash, that they never truly knew you at all. The renowned psychiatrist Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Sit with that for a moment. When you suddenly become someone who cannot be reached, who panics? Who erupts? Who starts trying to provoke you just to pull a reaction out of you, just to keep the familiar order alive? This situation reveals far less about who you are and far more about who they truly are. And more importantly, it exposes something you may not have fully seen: just how long you have been quietly steered by people around you. How many times you said yes when everything inside you was screaming no. How many times you sacrificed yourself just to preserve a peace that was never genuinely yours to protect, in order not to lose people who, at their core, were never truly standing beside you. In every forced yes that crawled out of your mouth, in every message you answered within seconds just to avoid the discomfort of delay, in every emotional performance you put on because it was expected of you. In all of these moments, you were surrendering a piece of your own vital energy to other people. And at the end of the day, what remained for you? A heaviness in your body and your soul, a deep and wordless disappointment, a vast, hollow ache you couldn't name, but could feel gnawing at you from somewhere beneath everything else. Do you want to know why you feel that way? Because you are far too accessible to people who haven't earned even a single minute of your silence. But let me be precise about what I mean. What I'm describing has nothing to do with withdrawing from the world entirely and disappearing into isolation. This is about learning to choose yourself before you give yourself away. This is about grasping what Carl Jung called individuation, that sacred inner journey of becoming a fully authentic and complete human being. And that journey begins the precise moment you understand that well-placed, conscious silence is infinitely more powerful than 1,000 eloquent arguments. It begins the moment you recognize that stepping back, when it comes not from fear, but from genuine awareness, is the most powerful thing you can ever do. If what you've heard so far is touching something real inside you, if you recognize this pattern in your own life, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if Jung philosophy is new to you, subscribe now. What we explore here goes far deeper than surface-level advice. Stay with us. Now let me look directly at you and ask, how much longer are you going to let other people's emotional states govern your entire existence? How many more years will you live like a puppet whose strings belong to someone else? Every time someone presses on your most vulnerable place, perhaps the moment has finally arrived to cut those strings, to pull back in silence, to become something genuinely difficult to read. Because the moment you stop being constantly within reach, the entire direction of the story changes. From the time you were a child, you were shaped to always be present, to come running when called, to make people comfortable, to paste a smile across your face and say yes, even when everything inside you was resisting. You were conditioned by the relentless weight of social expectation, gradually convinced that your worth was entirely bound to how selfless and reachable you were at any given moment. But here is something that perhaps no one has ever had the courage to say to you directly. This state of extreme availability is not a virtue. It is not a mark of goodness or depth. It is a cage you constructed with your own hands. For as long as you believe you must be emotionally or physically accessible every moment of every day, you will be used. Your energy will be extracted. And once you've served your purpose, you will be quietly placed aside and forgotten. Do you know why? Because the person who is always there is always predictable. And everything predictable eventually becomes nothing more than a resource in someone else's hands. People start treating you like an emotional emergency button, something to press when they need attention, soothing, validation, or simply a place to unload the weight they're carrying. When they've finished, they set you back on the shelf, and you don't even notice it happening. If you are always available for others, you have been living inside a quiet illusion that one day, when you need them, they will be there for you in the same way. But the real world and human nature do not function that way. Jung gave a name to the mask a person wears in order to be accepted, loved, and validated by society. He called it the persona. And what makes you so chronically accessible to others is precisely this mask of approval you have pressed so tightly to your face that you have forgotten it is a mask at all. You send the message that everything is fine while quietly suffocating inside. You answer the phone at midnight out of obligation, even as your eyes are closing from exhaustion. You constantly explain yourself, justify yourself, defend your choices, as though you owe this world an endless, unpayable debt. But here is a law you must never forget. The more frantically you scramble to secure a place in other people's lives, the more completely you erase yourself from the leading role in your own. Being perpetually available is the most silent and insidious form of self-abandonment there is. It is an unrelenting search for approval, a paralyzing dread of rejection, an obsessive effort to manage what others think of you. But that effort carries an enormous cost, and that cost is your inner peace. Your life energy drains as though you possess an infinite reserve. But your energy is precious. It has boundaries. The people who expect you to always be available don't genuinely care about your presence or your soul. They want the unconditional validation you supply. They want the companionship that silences their loneliness. They want the emotional comfort you offer so they can temporarily escape their own unresolved pain. When you begin to shift, when you establish limits, when you stop responding to their every impulse, even the people you were certain loved you grow cold. They accuse you of betrayal. They say you've changed as though that is an indictment. They treat you like a stranger. This doesn't mean you've become a worse person. The only reason this happens is that you are no longer the convenient instrument they had come to rely on. And here is the sharpest, most devastating part of all. The more available you are, the lower your perceived value becomes. In nature and in human psychology, nothing that is constantly abundant and always within reach is ever truly treasured. No one fights to hold onto something that will always be there. The permanently available option gradually becomes a burden, a symbol of something that costs nothing and is therefore worth nothing. If this part of what you're hearing is landing somewhere genuine inside you, if you feel the weight of this truth, drop "I reclaim my own energy" in the comments right now. Let that be your first act of reclaiming it. Now take a slow breath and think carefully. Who truly deserves your irreplaceable time? Who is genuinely worthy of your full attention, your presence, and even your silence? Before you can answer that, you need to understand a far more foundational mechanism. Why do we react so automatically? Why do we surrender and sacrifice rather than hold our ground? What is the deeper force beneath that almost instinctive urge to please, to explain, to be endlessly available? The answer lives in what Jung called psychological energy. Your life force is the most valuable currency you possess in this world, and if you never learn to guard it, to protect it, opportunistic individuals will absorb it and redirect it straight back at you as a weapon. Have you ever been crushed by the weight of unfair assumptions placed on you by others? Have certain people's careless attitudes ever cut you somewhere genuinely deep? Because we are now entering the darkest, most shadowed territory of human relationships, the very center of silent manipulation. You need to understand precisely how predatory and toxic people feed off your clean energy. And you need to understand how your unavailability dismantles their poisonous strategies completely. You believe you are in control of your own life. You assume your emotional responses are decisions made by your own free will. But the reality is far darker than that. Most of the reactions you give were installed in you, encoded, conditioned, and programmed from the time you were young. And the person who identifies that vulnerability can maneuver you effortlessly. Manipulative people don't need to scream at you, threaten you, or use force to get what they want. They simply press the invisible emotional triggers you left exposed, and you deliver exactly the reaction they calculated. Jung called this mechanism projection. It is the act of taking everything a person cannot bear to confront within themselves, their darkness, their deficiencies, their buried failures, and transferring it onto someone else. But this dynamic carries a dimension that very few people ever recognize. When others project their inner shadows onto you, if you have not established clear limits, you become nothing more than a vast white screen onto which their distorted images are cast. You know that so-called friend who only contacts you when they're in trouble, when they need something, or when they're simply bored with themselves. Or that partner who expects you to salvage their day every single time while evading their own responsibilities. Or that colleague who showers you with appreciation only for as long as you're solving their problems for them. None of this is coincidence. These people are not connecting with your actual self. They are in a relationship with the role you agreed to perform, the tireless rescuer, the endlessly patient caretaker, the emotional sanctuary available on demand. So why do you keep accepting that role? Because you are afraid. Terrified of disappointing people, of being excluded, of not being wanted, and at the deepest level, of ending up completely alone. The most destructive manipulation doesn't unfold through loud confrontations. It happens inside the suffocating silence of guilt. Even as you feel yourself diminishing on the inside, you swallow the poison because you feel indebted, because you feel you must always be present, always ready, always there. And this is the precise breaking point of the story. The person who has been manipulating you doesn't need to chain you physically. All they need is for you to keep delivering the same weakened, predictable responses inside the same cycle. But the moment you stop, the moment you pause and refuse to give that reaction, the illusion breaks apart. When you begin saying no, when you meet a flood of messages with silence, when instead of constructing elaborate explanations, you simply and quietly withdraw. In that moment, all the false projections collapse. The mask they pressed onto you falls away. And This deeply unsettles the people around you, because they can no longer predict you. They can no longer anticipate your next move. And worse, since they can no longer extract your energy, they are left to face the emptiness they have been carrying inside themselves all along. Very few people are prepared to sit with that. Your unavailability becomes a genuine disruption for them. The composed silence you offer forces out into the open the exact noise inside them that they have spent years running from. And in that moment, the attacks begin. Relentless criticism, dramatic emotional accusations. But none of this signals that you have lost your direction. Every bit of it simply confirms that you are no longer the useful reflection you once were. Jung gave us a striking truth to carry. People are not enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you step back from the cycle of exhaustion, the shadow that others have been concealing begins rising to the surface. For those who have been using you as an escape from their own unresolved pain, this is genuinely intolerable. And here is where the real question lands. Are you willing to endure the temporary but heavy discomfort of being misunderstood, of being pushed away, of being cut off, in order to guard what belongs to you? Are you willing to stand inside the silence that follows when the old bridges are gone? Because a completely new version of yourself takes root in the very heart of that stillness. Write, "I choose my own peace" in the comments below this video. If you are standing at this turning point, if something in you already knows it's time, let that be your declaration. Conscious silence, one of the most quietly devastating instruments available to the human spirit, rewrites every unfair rule that has governed the space between you and the outside world. We exist in an almost incomprehensibly loud era. Everyone wants to speak. Everyone wants to be heard. People spend their inner peace like loose change just to win meaningless arguments, just to appear righteous even when they're wrong. They feel compelled to respond to everything instantly, to comment on every situation, to never let a beat of silence pass without filling it. But there is a tremendous power that very few people understand, and even fewer have mastered. This is not the silence of passive acceptance. This is not the silence of someone who has surrendered or retreated in fear. This is conscious, deliberate, and utterly clear silence. This kind of silence is not absence. It is presence, with full, undeniable weight behind it. Jung viewed silence not merely as the absence of sound, but as the richest possible soil for a person's inner transformation. When you stop launching emotional reactions in every direction, you begin to observe. When you take the seat of the witness, you start perceiving details you could never have noticed while you were tangled inside the game. You watch the silent manipulation plays unfold. You see how people defeat themselves. You observe the same patterns repeating with astonishing regularity. You perceive it all from above, with the elevated clarity of someone who is no longer in the arena, but watching the arena. Silence grants you that kind of clarity, And a clear mind is the greatest disruption imaginable to anyone whose power over you depends on your confusion. Have you ever noticed how swiftly people unravel when you go quiet without explanation? When you don't respond? When you simply and suddenly become unreachable? The panic that follows is not longing for you. It is the terror of losing the ability to steer you. When you argue back, when you defend yourself, when you try to land the final point, you are still inside their game. But when you fall silent, you rewrite every rule of the game at once. You remove yourself from the board entirely. Real silence is not keeping your mouth closed. It is being the complete sovereign of your own energy. It is refusing to be pulled into the chaotic emotional currents others generate around you. It is the deliberate choice not to enter battles that will exhaust your spirit and return nothing. Jung taught that the journey toward discovering who you genuinely are demands this kind of withdrawal, because only inside that depth of stillness, far from the world's ceaseless interference, can you finally hear your own voice. The voice that has been buried beneath the accumulated weight of everyone else's expectations. But every real power carries a price. This silence will extract from your life the people who only valued the role you were performing for them. To those who could only ever see the image you provided, you will become difficult to understand, complex, and unreachable. They will say you're cold, arrogant, self-absorbed. These reactions are nothing more than the final thrashing of individuals who were never genuinely curious about your inner world, only about what you could produce for them. Here is the truth that emerges as you grow. As your mind becomes cleaner and clearer, you grow extraordinarily selective about where your words go. You begin to understand that every sentence leaving your lips is a gold coin drawn from your own life reserves. And you come to recognize that not everyone deserves access to that wealth. Sometimes silence is not withdrawal. It is absolute command. It is the dignified language of those who no longer need to justify their existence to anyone. Your silence unsettles others precisely because it leaves them alone with the thoughts they have been suppressing, alone with their own noise, with no outlet, with no one to reflect their chaos back at them. And the discomfort they feel in that exposure speaks more powerfully than any argument you could ever construct. You owe no one an explanation for your distance. Your distance explains itself. Those who feel threatened by your unavailability are revealing, in that very moment, exactly how desperately they need your instability in order to maintain the illusion of their own stability. They require you reactive and predictable, because without that, they have nothing solid beneath them. But the most enduring silence in all of this is not the one that unsettles others. It is the one that reconstructs you. The silence that severs your dependency on external approval. The silence that returns your depleted energy back to you, piece by piece. the silence that reintroduces you to who you were always meant to be, before the world told you who to perform. Inside that interior sanctuary, free from the relentless demands and the suffocating weight of others' expectations, you finally begin to gather your own genuine strength. You stop performing the role of the perpetually compassionate, eternally forgiving, always available character that the world scripted for you from an early age. Jung understood this deeply. Every authentic process of individuation passes through some degree of necessary isolation. Not the paralyzed loneliness of someone who has collapsed. This is a sacred withdrawal, a retreat where you lower the volume of the world and raise the frequency of your own inner voice. A season in which you rebuild your identity not from the outside in, but from your own center outward, from what is real within you rather than what is expected of you. Do you want a precise measure of your own inner transformation? A true indicator of how far you have traveled? Pay close attention to who begins pulling away when you become more boundaried, more selective, harder to access. Watch who tries to provoke a reaction from you when you stop delivering one. Observe who points at you and calls it a betrayal when you begin honoring your own soul. Every one of those responses is not evidence that you have gone wrong. It is the clearest possible confirmation that you are finally breaking through. Yes, in the beginning, choosing unavailability will feel foreign and profoundly uncomfortable. You will find yourself sitting with guilt. You will convince yourself you are being selfish. You will hear from those around you that you have become distant, closed off, impossible to connect with. But you must understand this. Every bit of that discomfort is the completely natural sound of an old system being dismantled. You spent an entire lifetime being shaped to place everyone else first and yourself perpetually last. Of course, this transformation will send tremors through you and through everyone who has been quietly drawing from your goodwill without giving anything genuine in return. Consciously becoming unreachable is the foundation of genuine self-determination. When you say no to the endless demands pressing in from the outside, you are saying the deepest possible yes to yourself. When you step back from the environments that have been slowly poisoning your spirit, you are declaring that your inner peace is worth infinitely more than any gathering of people who never truly saw you. When you stop explaining yourself, stop apologizing for taking up space, stop shrinking to accommodate others, the circle of people around you may grow smaller, but the individuals who remain will begin treating you with something you may not have experienced in a long time: genuine respect. Not everyone will be prepared for this version of you, the one with boundaries, with depth, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows what they will and will not accept. Your refusal to be their emotional resource will open wounds they have been running from. It will expose exactly how dependent they were on your chaos, your compliance, your endless availability to maintain the fragile illusion of control in their own lives. And in that moment of recognition, the great separation happens. Every significant separation carries its own particular ache, a loneliness, a grief for something that is passing. But here is the real truth at the center of all of it. You are not losing anything. You are being freed from something that was quietly consuming you. So what comes after the silence? When you stop waiting on the margins for everyone else, you begin to feel something ancient shifting deep inside you. First, the quiet itself arrives, disorienting, echoing, occasionally filled with doubt. You wonder if you are doing the right thing. You question whether you are being too harsh, too withdrawn, too unwilling to meet people where they are. But as the days pass and you hold steady inside that space, the quality of the silence begins to transform. The restless doubts gradually give way to something cleaner, to stillness. And that stillness begins to repair you from the inside. Then comes solitude. Not the solitude of someone who has been cast out and left behind, but the solitude of someone who is entirely at home within themselves. The solitude of those who have discovered they do not need another person's presence to feel complete. It is the solitude of the genuinely strong, the solitude of someone who no longer abandons their own soul just to have company at the end of the day, who closes their eyes at night with something approaching real peace. Where there was once constant confusion and noise, there is now a mind of extraordinary clarity. Where there was once a heart seized by the dread of abandonment and the hunger for approval, there is now an unshakable steadiness. Where there was once a spirit starving for the attention and validation of others, something remarkable begins to grow. The deep, quiet power of being sufficient unto yourself. Jung taught that the path toward reaching your truest self requires leaving behind the collective noise, shedding the masks that were pressed onto you by circumstance and conditioning, and being willing to travel a significant portion of your journey alone. What you are doing by choosing to become unreachable, by refusing to be at the mercy of every demand and every person who wanted only what you could offer them, is exactly this. You are not escaping people. You are not abandoning the world. You are returning home, back to the self that was gradually lost across all the years of trying to be what everyone else needed. This is the stage where you stop being a passive, reactive presence merely surviving whatever happens to arrive and become someone who builds their own reality deliberately from the inside out. The people who were disturbed by your limits have demonstrated, through their very reaction, what was always true. They were never genuinely invested in you. They were invested in what you provided. They never truly saw you, only what function you served. And now that you no longer inhabit that narrow, exhausting role, they don't know what to do with themselves. And witnessing that, truly seeing it clearly, is one of the most quietly liberating experiences a human being can have. You will lose certain people on this part of the road, but in exchange, you will recover yourself. You will leave behind the draining conversations and the spaces that extracted from you without replenishing you, and you will reunite with your own energy, intact and fully yours. You will be misunderstood. People will say things, but for the first time in a long time, you will be someone with genuine boundaries, someone who holds their center, who cannot be easily moved, who has learned that their presence is not something to be given away freely to whoever reaches for it. Because when you stop making yourself available to every demand, every emotional extraction, every person who sees you as a means rather than a human being, you become one of the rarest and most quietly powerful presences in this world. This journey is not a self-improvement strategy. This is a transformation. The dissolution of the old, depleted version of you and the quiet emergence of someone who knows their own worth. Someone whose strings cannot be pulled by cheap psychological games, hollow affection, or the fear of being left behind. This is the beginning of a life where no one's emotional scraps are enough to satisfy you, where manipulation finds no foothold, where love used as leverage can no longer hold you in place. You now allow into your life only what resonates with the peace of your soul, the truth of your actual experience, and the dignity of your presence. If you have listened this far, if you have walked this entire road alongside these words, then something in you was already preparing for this. The wisest part of you already knows, if the price of being wanted, of being accepted in certain rooms, is abandoning your own inner world and grinding your worth into nothing, then that acceptance was never worth having. Real self-respect, real love for yourself, begins with the capacity to turn back every single time, even if it means standing alone for a season, and choose yourself anyway. So I ask you one final time, are you willing to be misunderstood, to be pushed away, to be quietly removed from the lives of people who only valued what you did for them in the name of your own freedom, the dignity of your soul, and the peace that belongs to you and no one else? Are you genuinely ready to pay the cost of becoming who you already are, and to carry the quiet, sovereign power of your own unavailability? The life that waits on the other side of that choice is unlike anything you have allowed yourself to imagine. It is steadier. It is cleaner. It is yours entirely and without apology. And it has been waiting for you for a very long time. We will see you there.